Now this is the Franken manuscript, 1783. All right. This will be the 14th degree. I'm going to give you the 14th degree. All right. So this will go to the picture that I'm going to show you below, which deals with the Pence character being given a coin, and that coin being symbolic of a degree called perfection. All right. Right here. What I'm going to do is I'll take a picture of all these pages because it's quite lengthy. However, I want to jump to a couple of places first. The first place I want to go to is on once you get through the preliminaries, they'll have the form of reception. All right. So then I wanted you, and that's how the person enters the room. You'll see the same type of code nonsense. This is where I wanted to show you. The two-ball cane character shows up here. Remember I told you about that? Being the current play being shown to you is the idea of the trump character being the marked man, or Cain. You have Lamech being the blinded old man who is then deceived by two-ball cane to shoot Cain with an arrow. Pew! Beep! All right? Then, with a clap, Lamech dispatches two-ball cane. All right? Now, what I told you goes through the biblical story. What these guys are telling you, there's just a bunch of gibberish in here for the most part. But let me just keep going. And there's another place I wanted to go to. Now this goes into showing you just straight hypocrisy under obligation, where it says that it's swearing on the Holy Bible, which in itself means nothing. And in the presence of the great architect of the universe. You saw him, I want to say, in the third Matrix movie. All right? Because it's just all gibberish as well. All right? So then also, I wanted to show you that they then make, or they swear on a book that tells them not to do that. And here's the kicker here. Because these guys are telling you all the things they're not going to be doing. So here, if you've been paying attention to the story, it says, I swear I never will lay with the wife of my brother, nor dishonor his sister. Blah, 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 blah. The two-ball cane character, i.e. the hunter character in this play, forgot a word. Now these, of course, are all the contortions that they go through with the passwords and the different arm signs and body language and whatnot. However, here, take a look. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. Fairy tales. Because this is where they have Enoch building an underground base, basically. And, that's what their fascination with underground bases and, what do they call them? Dumbs. Deep underground military base. A dumb. Now, some of you have not been around long enough to know about dumbs. However, they were big news back in the really in the 70s, 80s, 90s. That was always big conspiracy stuff. But in the 90s, really with the implementation of Mel's Hole, the idea of the bottomless pit was born. So then that took off into that was really back in the Art Bell days. Where and you might not be able to find it now, but there was a video of a guy who was claiming to be Mel, and it was him next to a hole, and he was chucking lawn furniture in there. And anyways, you never saw in the hole. It was obviously a hoax, but I found it to be quite funny. You can't find that video anymore. Yeah, moving along. So this is just this is tedious storytelling here. But right here is where you get to the idea of the Mason being taught again and again and again, but in this case, the idea of how to false witness, the idea of deception, and the idea that that deception, while it's negative, will then give you a positive result, meaning the ends justify the means type of idea, and do as thou wilt will be the whole of the law. That idea will be the whole in the law. Now here you're going through a lecture. I should have told you that. Anyways, back here a ways, this is now, you're into the lecture phase to where you've already proven yourself and everybody's relaxed. They've put their swords down. Their sheaths have become flaccid, and they allow you to then listen to this guy tell you about the story. And within each story you can see, for example, here, you can see that that's nothing more than a 1 Corinthians 13:12 ripoff, obviously. So anyways, that's what you go through. You have the goy, the curious cowans. That's the idea of the curious masses. The masses are asses idea. Drop the M. The idea of the M. The idea of you turn it. It's a 3. The idea of you turn it. All right. It's a W. The idea of you turn it. It's the shape of an E idea. So then it's really just that revolution idea. And the idea of revolution, which you see the intermingling of the World War II hoax with because war is controlled demolition and strategic relocation, period. I don't care what your friends and family told you. If they told you they were shooting at people in the field, they are liars and they are spiritual murderers. And if they tell it in my presence, I will put that onto their soul. All right? Just so you know. Anyways, moving through the story, you can then just decode it as I've told you. Simply, here's a few ideas here. This one goes into the idea of the people's house, which you've also heard. The idea of, if it's a people's house, how can the people trespass? It's always the idea of the hypocrisy in the statement. Because I told you before, when there's hypocrisy, there's no truth. All right, because they do not exist together. That is the leaven. So by now you haven't even been able to take a break, right? No popcorn, no nothing. You're working through this lecture. He gets to this point to where lay siege. That's the idle time idea. Remember I told you about that? I can't do that because just the way the light works. I'll zoom in. The idle time idea. The idea of the 9 time reflecting into the present, the presented tone, because you see it's on the musical the musical chart. It's a musical note in the reflection. All right. So that idea of the musical note. All right. So anyways, moving forward. Okay, I used the wrong word before. That was the end of the discourse, which is slightly different than the lecture. Because the lecture, so now you're completely bored out of your wits already. But that's the end. Now you can move to the general lecture. However, you need to go through some questions and answers. And here's quite interesting, because this is where Judas is introduced into the story. All right? And talking about betrayal of Jesus Christ. There you see right there in your Masonic document is the name, Jesus Christ, through which you are brought out of this fallen hoax world. You are given the mind of Christ, freely given, freely received. Look at this. It says 25 pence of our English money, so that the 30 dinars, see? So it's the idea of the 7 into the 3 again, but also the 30 pieces of silver, representing the Judas goat joke character. Because you have to always remember that the goat is the joke. The idea of the Prometheus in the room. The idea of Pandora is just the female version of the jokester, because it's just nothing but snakes. You know, you open the can and all the snakes pop out at you. It's all just, it is all just a story. Oh, by the way, here you have the idea of the bloody field. All right, that's the idea of the battlefield. Okay. Now here you're going to go into the story about the idea of each coin being worth a crown. All right, which is that's also going into the story that's happening now. All right. Okay, again on this side, you're going to start to come into the idea of, again, with the not only the 27 code reflected, but also the idea of the underground bases and that idea again. As far as the looking here, the destruction of the temple, therefore at that destruction time, then there's the idea of hiding 27 feet below. That idea of the word or the ark. All right. Now at this point I highlighted a few things. This only in order to verify dates and time to when this was printed to what is existent now, just to make sure that that was still correct, or at least currently, I should say, currently in power. All right. Now this goes into the idea of the question, what happened after these horrid crimes of Solomon, the idea of the king being accosted. All right, I'll let you read all that on your own. Now what this goes into is it's talking about, this is now the end, it's talking about captivity, how long captivity lasted. It's again going to have the 7-2 code. It's also talking about celebrated prophets and ideas of those, and that's why you have those stories then highlighted within these different degrees. Now again, the worship of the delta. Now, a delta is, think of this, if you have a water system and you're wanting to filter it, if you have, let's say you have one here, all right, that's going to be your filter. All right, you're going to have water going through. You're going to have a gauge here and a gauge here. All right, you're going to have pressure coming through here. You're going to look at the pressure that comes through the filter, and the difference between those two will be your delta. Okay, so the idea of worshiping, so, and then what is kind of like, how do you then see, how can you also write delta? You can do it like this, right? Boom, boom, like this. Also, please notice this shape and this number. Oops, yeah. As I wrote you the dimensions of the splinter that causes there to be 0 chance in this place of perfection. All right? Because everything is slightly, remember, just like if you have 4 tires rotating, there may be a time as you're watching them that they all appear to be at the same position. However, that's only going to be rarely. All right? That's going to be the time of this. All right? The time of a crossing. And that can be looked at. The idea of the 19-year Masonic cycle crossing, the 7, the 2, the 24, all the different cycles depending on what you're looking for, will then depend on that idea of balance. Just like, think of it balancing a tire, because you're balancing for an imperfection. It's also the 47th problem, so-called, of masonry, which I've given a video on, and I will post that as well. That's not a problem, it's simple.